we'll just do a brief introduction. I know Troy has been talking, Troy Leith, and so we'll just go around the room, and we know that you work at Riddles, and you are?
Julia Ward.
Yeah.
And I own a couple businesses in town. I own the Hitching Post, and I own FedEx operation and raise and race greyhounds, and so got a lot going.
Got a lot going on.
Yes.
Yay. All right. Who's next? It doesn't matter.
I'm Jill. I work at Riddles.
Okay. And are you new at Riddles?
I am.
She's the new girl, so we're really getting her inundated. Yeah.
I came from nursing. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Yay. All right. And your name is?
Kelsey.
Kelsey. All right.
And I'm Tara, and I work at Riddles.
Riddles also. Thank you for coming and participating with us. Troy, we'll just let you go ahead and do what you do.
Okay, 30 minutes, so we're going to move through this pretty fast, really. And I'll start by saying, as we go through this, if anybody would want a deeper dive, I can arrange that. And what I would do is come to your business and do what we call a talent optimization strategy session. And really, that's just getting you into the people data software and talking about how it works. So just keep in mind that we can do that. So we're going to breeze through here. My first introduction is into the predictive index, and it's deeper than a personality profile. And sometimes it's easy to get locked into, well, let's just profile everybody's personality and decide what everybody is. But what we do with a tool like the predictive index, it deals with people data. And like all data, if you don't learn it and apply it, it's just data.
Worthless.
And so the predictive index, I give you a short history on it. In World War II, we were falling behind in the war. Our bombers were leaving, and too many of them weren't coming back. And so they started two studies. It wasn't the Air Force then, it was the Army Air Guard, if that's the right name. So they started two studies. One of them was they put somebody on the airplane and said, the airplanes that come back, figure out where they don't have bullet holes. And let's start armoring that. Because if it came back with a bullet hole over here, let's not waste our time, let's armor. Let's assume the ones that didn't make it got a bullet hole somewhere else. The other one was they put a group on the people, because too many people were coming off of those bombing missions and just couldn't go back. They were done. Probably what started PTSD. So they started quizzing people coming off of these bombers. Then they started quizzing people before they put them on one. And they started to look for traits of people who could seem to get on there and just go mission after mission after mission. And this was the beginning of Predictive Index. War is over and comes back, and the gentleman that founded Predictive Index brought all that data home, went into his attic, developed it, kept quizzing people, and in about 1950-ish, somewhere in there, launched Predictive Index into the world, and it's been around ever since then. Millions of people have taken the assessments, and millions of people have put it into use. So it's been around a long, long time. It is honestly, for me, the most usable, interactive predictor of human behaviors that I've ever seen. And it's not deep. It's deep science behind it, but it's not deep user-friendly. They put it all into a software tool that I have projected here, only so that makes it more usable. That lets us load people in there and start to predict. And what we look for is how I'm wired as a human and how you're wired as a human. And we're different. And that's good. And too often, when we're different, we just say that's bad. And we go the other way. But if we can know that and embrace that, then we recognize that that's a good thing. The other thing that's important when you start talking about people data and talent optimization, there's a few things we can't measure with a survey. Moral code, ethics, honesty, and intention. Can't measure those. I can just know how you might apply yourself to the world. And crazy enough, criminals, the good ones, are a master of this stuff. So as we start using it, we have to sometimes figure that out. And we're in small town Kansas, and sometimes our friendliness turns into naive. And so anyway, just a side note, those are things that you can't measure. Can't measure that.
Do you have that in here?
That's not really in there.
Okay.
This is Troy saying, this is
Can you give me the list again?
what I know, that
Honesty.
those are things you can't measure. Just basically integrity and moral code.
Okay. Integrity and honesty.
Yep. So I like to say, figure out how you're going to do business or how you're going to do life, and align yourself with people who believe what you believe, and that's who you team up with. So what we do is two things. We do the assessment of people, and then we get an understanding of that, and then we do an assessment of a team, because when the group of people come together as a team, they create something else. But again, we're back to people data. If we build a team, and I'm going to bring up a real team here. If we create a team based on people data, and we form a well-rounded team, because everybody's different, you're back to data. If we don't hear what the person on the other side of the thing says, why do we do it? So if Julie and I are different, and we came on a team together because of that, and she don't hear me or I don't hear her, then would we accomplish? So
are you wanting a team where everybody's in the one group?
actually, this is a group of real people who we have surveyed, and these people operate on a team together.
All those people there.
All these people here. Now we have a whole bunch of people right over here that are basically think and process information and react the same.
Okay.
And we have 3 kind of outliers in that. So the process and precision measure we have covered in our team. We have people who can say, okay, Troy, this happens to be Troy. Hey Troy, I know that sounds great, but there's a way we need to do that. And there's a way we gotta document. Otherwise, we would be innovation and agility and teamwork and employee experience blazing away and having a great time and doing a lot of innovative stuff and have no documentation as to what to do. What we are short is somebody who has strengths in the results and discipline mode. So this is just a quick glimpse ahead of once we have profiled our team individually, then we bring them together and talk about how are you guys going to function together.
So can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So as I look at those 4 different squares and you lack in results and discipline, you're referring to like following through and making sure that this stuff's all being done?
Probably, yes.
And so do you guys have a challenge with that then?
We have a challenge with that.
You know
We
that?
do. We
okay.
know.
I
We
just
know
was
that.
curious.
Yep.
Okay.
So what I gave you guys as a handout is basically this page that says people data provides an awareness on multiple levels. Number 1, awareness of self. That's where it starts. And number 2, awareness of the fact that everyone in the room is different, and everyone in the room is going to have their own strength. What I like to call everyone has their own unique superpower. We all have one. Believe it or not, we all have one. And there's too many people out there that have never been told that and never understood that and never been allowed to find it. So we all have one, but if we don't identify it and let it shine through, then we're not really accomplishing anything. So on the individual basis, we profile people, and they break into 17 basic profiles. And within those 17, there's hundreds and millions of variations within that. And so basically we measure 4 factors in the predictive index world. We measure the need for dominance, that is the drive to accept, to bring my influence over people or situations. Do I have a high need to be in charge and dominate and all of that? And so if we go into Troy, and I predict me on here instead of a random person when I'm doing a brief explanation like this, because everyone in here has at least known me for about
30 seconds.
Yeah, a few minutes. So we measure a dominance, and that is this A line. I'm far to the left, so that becomes low. I have a low need for dominance. I'm right in the middle of that. So I can be in charge or I can not. I'm very flexible that way. And this tells me that. And I've taken the test twice, 2 years apart, to test the fact, and I'm the same person. I've had a lot of people say, we don't believe that, and take it again. My answer is, okay.
Right.
It's not going to change. A life event could change us.
Right.
If I'm too young when I took it, and if I'm 15 or 16, by the time I'm 20, I'm different. I think there's a number in there at about 17 where it's starting to be accurate. The next thing we measure is extraversion, and that's this B line, the drive for social interaction with other people. On the dominant factor, I accomplish things by dominating and having people do stuff, like you do this and you do that. The high B, which I am, is we accomplish things with and through and for people. Back to what led me into this whole thing was I was in a field where I just didn't have the people interaction. So I had no fulfillment. And so ever since then, what I get fulfillment from is if I help somebody succeed. If I help somebody get better at what they're doing, then I'm happy. I don't need the gold star. I don't need the rewards. That fed me. So the next thing we measure is a patience measure. How patient is someone? Are they going to be high on that scale where everything's got to be right now? Or it's I can wait till this plays out. It's just a patience thing. In combination with everything else, that's why I say there's millions of different people. We could all be promoters, like my 17 thing. I'm known in the promoter category. There could be thousands of that in the little combinations of how patient am I, how dominant am I, how much do I really need the people interaction. And the third one is just the formality, the flexibility. Being low on that scale, flexibility is what I'm all about. Everything's gray. But I'm close enough to the middle that I can say, okay, this one really needs a black and white.
Mm-hmm.
People that might be far to the right or high on that formality scale, they have no gray. It's got to be this or this. And so this comes to a point where we have to be careful and know that. So if I'm working side by side with somebody that's way up there and I'm way down here, if both of us recognize that, we can have a direct conversation. And they might say, no, Troy, this one really has to have a black and white. Now, it's measured in sigmas. So that 0 line in the middle, that's in the middle. So in my case, my collaborative or my need for dominance and my need for drive are pretty close to the middle, which means I can flex on that. And we can all flex for a while and do something that's outside of our comfort zone. In the talent optimization world, we call that a people tax. We're paying a people tax to go there because it's draining on us. It's hard. It's not natural for me. So now, here's the next thing. The further we get away from center, either direction on any one of these 4 measures, that becomes not a kind of how I prefer to operate. It starts to become how I have to operate. My high B, working with and through and for people, is so high. I can come out of it and I can go into discipline mode if I have to, but not for very long. I have to, as a supervisor, I have to come back to, let's figure this out. Let's help you succeed. And that being a superpower comes with a kryptonite. I can become too naive that way and go too far. Sometimes people, it gets back to what we can't measure. Sometimes they're just using that. They have no intention to perform the way we want. So those are the basic 4 measures that these profiles measure. And then when we throw everybody together into a team, this is when they all come together and start really talking about how do we connect.
I have a question. On these 17 reference profiles, are you only one of them, or can you be several of them?
You're typically only one of them. You can shift into them. So I'm going to pass these around. Here becomes what we call analytical profiles. Here's what becomes basically social profiles. And then here's what becomes basically a stabilizing profile. And then here's what becomes what we might call persistent profiles. So now we start looking at people and saying, okay, I need somebody with some more drive or persistence. So when we start putting people on a team, we say 2 things. If I have something to accomplish, and I brought my team together, and I came back here to my team, and I decide I need something, we use the term, where can I go to get that? So we start by saying, who's in the room? Who's in the room? Who do I know well? And I'm around them every day. And I could go invite them onto my team and let them have their point of view. Well, I can't balance. So who's in the building? So who's further out in my circle that I might know? And in some businesses, or whatever we're trying to accomplish with our team, sometimes it's so severe that says, who's on the street? Now I need to go talent optimization of the way that says I need to hire a person specifically like this. Because if I hire another one like this, guess what I'm going to get? More views like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've used this at the company where I work. We use this to hire. We hire a lot of people in a specific line of work, and we have really built a fantastic profile. So we know sometimes when we interview somebody and they take this, that it's either not going to work or it stands a really good chance. We've redirected people to different roles because maybe we had a need over here and they've never really understood that. So when you build your team, you get down to a team type. And this group right here becomes an anchoring team. And so I think in your handout you also have the team types. So basically they're saying there's that many different teams. And if you look in the middle, that adapting team, if our team was filled with people who had a really neutral profile, a tight pattern where I'm really flexible, I can be dominant or not, social or not, then that would be an adapting team. They could probably go down any path you wanted them to. But at some point you would need a strong deal, unless they're literally just a maintenance, keep this thing the way it is type of deal. So
so where do you want to be? You want one in each corner?
I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And this is where we get down to an individual talent optimization thing, that if we came down and we profiled your team, the first thing we would do is really outline what it is that your team's trying to do. And then we bring up that team type. And then when we fill out what that team's really trying to do by answering some of these questions, then we come down to what's our strategy. So if we end up with a team strategy that says we need an executing team because there's some things we're going to do with this team that we really got to just get some stuff done, and I have literally an exploring team. I've filled my team with people that I might call the shiny object types. What's new and exciting, and I'm always jumping to the new thing, but I really just need execution. Then I would need to change my team. So the answer to that question is it really just depends on what it is as our team we're trying to do.
So as I'm looking at your team, I guess you don't have necessarily or do you have like an executive or executing?
We really don't, and see this is.
Would WL be the closest one to that?
And here's what would happen. WL would be the closest one to that. So if we really needed that, because WL's the closest one to that.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we can flex into a role
Right.
if it's not a big move.
Right. It's not like you going down
Yep.
to execute it. Yeah.
Right. TL, if you said, Troy, your role now is to come down here and just make sure that we're doing results and discipline.
Right. You don't.
Don't
That's
do
not. Yeah.
Just don't do it. But we would come here and say, look, we can't find anybody that naturally is doing that. We're going to need you to intentionally come over here and fill that role for us.
Okay.
And then we're all going to have to understand we asked that person to move over there. So, yeah, the answer to that is we find the person who can make the shift with the least amount of people tax and fill that role for us.
Okay.
Or we go find somebody.
Right. Okay.
And so in the results and discipline, we need to find somebody who's focused on results and goal achievement. Our process and precision, they're going to be focused on, let's document this process so we can just do it over and over and over and over without a lot of stress. Up here, these guys are thinking, yeah, great, do that. I'm going to go do a bunch of other innovative stuff. But what we need somebody is to say, okay, wait, we have the process now. Follow it and make sure we're following it. So the question is, and this team right here is about to enter a little different mode. This team has worked very well because of what they were doing, launching something new and finding all of the answers to unknown questions and learning new things. But in pretty short order, it's going to come down to, okay, now it's time to execute and repeat, execute and repeat. So when we go to fill the next role on this team, we're going to be down here saying, let's talk about that, and we'll change something I'm going to show you right here. So here's a job profile, and here comes to filling the team. We know what the team's trying to do, we know what the team looks like, and we know what we need on the team. And so we come in here and we fill out what's called I just did this with a client in the medical world. They were trying to find somebody to handle their medical billing that couldn't be like them because they weren't able to do it. And so we filled out all the needs and we come up with a profile, and they interviewed some people and there was just like a exact match. So they asked the questions, and when you ask the questions and there's an exact match, it goes right to it. We built one of these for the world of meat processing. And we have a couple of people. Here's a person we talked to when we came in and said, okay, custom meat processing. They got to be collaborative because they're going to do a custom order. And just because they like 2-inch steaks don't mean they got to get grumpy when someone wants a 2.5 inch or 2 16. So they got to flex. They got to be. We don't want them to be overly social because they'll just be standing around at the coffee pot talking all day about what they're going to be doing. So we need them to be able to shut that down and actually go back and do it. And they got to be patient and steady because it's a custom thing. So if I got somebody over here that's high drive, it's not going to work very well. It's got to be enough patience to say, could you tell me really what you want? And then they got to be precise. We said they got to lock into that. They got to lock into it. So when we're doing this, I filled that out, and I said, well, you don't want me. I'm going to be at the coffee pot talking about the next one, and I'm going to say, well, gosh, they might want a 2.5 inch, and I think let's let them try a 2 7/16 steak. So
Gotcha.
I'm way too flexible. We said somebody's got to lock in to what they're doing. So, this is a real person that we said, hey, here would be a fantastic match to that. And when you build this profile, you can do it a couple of ways. You can bring in a role model of somebody you profiled that you know is exactly knocking it out of the park. They're doing it every day, and it's not even work. Like they can't even believe you're paying them to do it. Or you can go through from a role of people who understand what you're trying to hire, and they fill out a questionnaire. You fill out the assessment from the backside. So you pop out with what we want. And then you bring in people and you assess them, and they might land there and they might not land there. And so that's then how you start filling your team with what you need. And again, it's all people data. So like all data, if you don't use it, it's just data on a page. So anyway, we could go on and on and on, and it's 1 o'clock. So I tried to crunch the basics into a 30-minute window. I wanted to do it in 20 to leave more questions, but the essence is Predictive Index is a tool that has a lot of science and years behind it. I've not profiled anybody that didn't read their profile when they were done that says, how'd you know all that? And then when you start combining them on teams, I could show you a couple where we had 2 teams drastically different, and one team wouldn't adapt, and it just was train wreck after train wreck after train wreck, and the data is right in front of them. But ego or drive or intent, whatever, wouldn't let them change. And there's a case where the data's in front of you, and if you don't use it, then what happens? So, and again, the offer is, if anybody wanted to just take a dive into this and explore it, I would set up what we call a talent optimization one-on-one. And we take and we build you a data set that's your own. We survey the people, assess the people involved. We go through talking about what your team's trying to do, and we plot them all on there, and then we start talking about that. It's a fascinating deal, that.
So, what do you charge?
In the end, if a person subscribes to Predictive Index, it all depends on how many people and some things like that. That becomes a negotiation with the Predictive Index company to get my own software login and use the data. It's very flexible. They have all kinds of flexibility. My role...
Can you give me a range?
I don't even know, because it's so flexible on the bottom side. The challenge is here in Dickinson County, we're a nice community with a lot of small businesses, and the software pricing structure is geared in that 50 to 400 employee range. So the flexibility becomes, hey, I have 6 or I have 10. What can I do?
Okay.
And then that becomes just a talk with the Predictive Index company to say, what do we do here? And But this is honestly where a lot of organizations come in. Maybe we say, hey, I'm part of the organization, why don't we do it through them and stuff like that, so.
So, and I assume that it's sold per company. So like myself having 4 companies,
You would do
there's a
that.
different price for each company.
You would
based
call
on the
yourself whatever your parent company would be in that case. I
company. Can I say
would,
that again?
I would tell you, if that was your deal, then you would buy it as your main company. I wouldn't say I have 4, I would say I own companies. I'm Julie Ward.
Right. So, but if you have different teams,
Mhm.
how would you be able to do such? So, because obviously the people that work at the restaurant have nothing to do with the people that deliver packages.
Yeah.
So,
Are you still recording?
okay.
And then I'm gonna answer that.